Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But today is the 15th of April 2024. I hope all of you had a very pleasant Eid. The Eid holidays are over. Everybody is back to work. We have been working despite it being the Eid or not. That is what our responsibilities are. Today is no exception, and these are the topics that we will be discussing during the course of our show. We'll begin with the tensions in the Middle East and the day 192 of the Palestinian war. We all know that Iran launched a barrage of more than 100 medium-range ballistic missiles, over 30 land attack cruise missiles and more than 150 attack drones at Israel. This was confirmed by a senior US military official on Saturday. And of course, at least 9 Iranian ballistic missiles managed to elude Israel's elaborate air defense systems and the fire from allied militaries in the region. They did hit the Nevatim air base, damaging a C-130 transport aircraft, a runway and empty storage facilities. An additional 4 ballistic missiles also hit the Negev airbase, but there were no reports of significant damage. There was also a lot of activity post and during this whole. There was a conversation between the Israelis Prime Minister and Joe Biden as well on this, in which it was again reiterated that Israel should not exacerbate the effects of this tension or increase in tension in the Middle East. At the same time, on Sunday also there was an urgent meeting of the United Nations in which it was said that all of this tension needs to be de-escalated and it should not lead to a bigger offense or offensive in the Middle East. This was said by Antonio Guterres of all others. The fact also remains that Israel is also hell-bent on giving a response to Iran. What kind of response will it be, despite the warnings that have been given by the United Nations and other allied countries, is yet to be seen. This and more is happening, and of course we all know what is happening in Palestine as well. The number of casualties keep on increasing. 33,797 Palestinians have been killed, while 76,465 have been wounded in Israeli attacks in Palestine since the 7th of October last year. In the past 24 hours alone, 68 Palestinians have been killed, 94 have been injured. This and more will be discussed in our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns our Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb, who's arrived in Washington on Sunday with his team to participate in the IMF and World Bank spring meetings and also initiate talks on a new financial package that could range anywhere between 6 to 8 billion US dollars. They will also be meeting with senior officials from various international financial institutions and finance ministers from China, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Turkey and other friendly nations who are also attending the event. This and more will be discussed, and of course Pakistan's future with the IMF will also be part of our discussion in the second story. Then we'll be talking about the Saudi foreign minister who has arrived in Pakistan. A high-level Saudi delegation led by the foreign minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan bin Abdullah arrived in Pakistan shortly, a couple of minutes back in fact, and the visit of course is aimed at lending positive impetus to enhance bilateral cooperation and mutually rewarding economic partnership. And many important members are part of this delegation, whether it be Saudi Minister for Water and Agriculture or others. And of course, this is also in the whole wake up of all that has been happening in the region, and also to further expedite the understanding reached between Prime Minister Mohammed Shehbaz Sharif and the Crown Prince and Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia Mohammed bin Salman during their recent meeting in Makkah. Finally, we'll be talking about the Pakistani climbers who are aiming to scale world's 14 highest peaks, whether it be Sajid Satpara, whether it be Sirbaz Khan, Shahroz Kashif, whether it be Samina Beg or Naila Kiani, Sabah Halim. There are just some of the names of those mountaineers who've been trying to scale all the peaks in the world and in Pakistan as well. And of course, Pakistan is extremely proud of those. We'll be highlighting that, and then we'll be talking about genetic engineer, a French-Canadian genetic engineer, Michael Sutherland, who has been awarded an Oscar of Science Prize in Los Angeles on Saturday for his research into genetically modifying immune cells to fight cancer. This is going to be our lineup for today. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the tensions that have been escalating in the Middle East since Iran launched more than 100 medium-range ballistic missiles, over 30 cruise missiles and more than 150 attack drones at Israel. We've been joined by 2 guests to discuss this very important issue. One of them is online, one of them is in the studios. In the studios, we've been joined by Dr. Salma Malik. She's an expert in foreign affairs. Thank you very much, Dr. Salma, to have joined us, and Guzashta Eid Mubarak to you and family as well. And our second guest joins us online. Dr. Setareh Sadeqi. She's a political analyst and joins us from Iran. Ma'am, thank you very much to have joined us to discuss this very important issue. We'll just begin with you, Dr. Salma. I'll begin with what the different statements that the US has taken out. The first concerns White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby. He was talking on NBC's Meet the Press, and he says we are not looking for a wider war with Iran. He adds that the US does not want to see this escalate. He also says we have a collective responsibility as members of the Security Council to ensure that Iran complies with the Council's resolutions and ceases its violation of the Charter. This was said by Deputy US Ambassador Robert Wood, adding that in the coming days the US will explore additional measures to hold Iran accountable. So there are two different sides of the coin as far as these two statements are concerned. What, in your point of view, will be the extent of US involvement post this event that has happened?
Thank you so much, Omar, and Guzashta Eid Mubarak to you and your team as well. Although it was a very dampened Eid because of the Palestinian issue.
Of course.
And one could only wish that any of these things that are happening would have led to some amicable solution, as there were talks about a ceasefire in Ramzan or some kind of an impasse that would happen in this Ramzan, which
never happened,
which eludes. So far as this situation is concerned, number one, we have to make one thing clear. Where the larger scheme of events leads to the Palestinian issue, this is absolutely a standalone situation that has arisen. This is a purely Iranian-Israeli thing, and many of us are being emotive about it, that this is in support of the Palestinians, although the dynamics of these things that have unfolded in the last 48 to 72 hours are very independent and autonomous in their own right. Now, about the US reaction, you might have also noticed that even in the previous incidents or any of the provocations that took place around, US has been very guarded about keeping this thing limited to a certain scale and not exceeding beyond that. And they have tried to do that time and again. The reason primarily being because they don't really want to have, there's no love for international peace or global peace and security, but they don't want to have too many fronts open for themselves and to engage in another issue so close to
the elections.
Two elections, one. Number two, they have just come out of Afghanistan. Even if we say that it's been a couple of years, they have yet to recover from Afghanistan. They are already badly engaged in Ukraine, Russia, and most of the European power potential and the money is engaged in that capacity. So they cannot afford to open a new front, and this is not going to be a limited front, technically speaking. If the Middle Eastern front opens wholeheartedly, it's going to be a global catastrophe. It's going to involve not one but several countries, allies, friends, acquaintance, enemies, frenemies. Everyone is going to get involved because the stakes in Middle East are far closer and far more complicated than they are anywhere else in the world. And the US for once definitely knows that it cannot afford having such an encounter happening so close to so many things. Now about the statements coming from Bob Wood and John Kirby's statement, they're very clear. They say that we don't want any physical expansion of the war, yet they have in their kitty a number of ways of checkmating or telling Iran not to go beyond what it is doing. And they have also appealed to the G7 that there has to be some collective way of disciplining quote unquote Iran, and they need to make it sure that it complies. At the same time, they stand fully committed to defending Israel, and this is something which is very consistent in their US policies. So these are the very, very important lines. So they don't want to expand, they want to contain Iran and prevent it, check it from carrying out any future action, so to speak. They want to discipline it, they want to admonish it, and very importantly, they have to stand by Israel. Now what they have mentioned to Israel is that what Israel has done through preventing Iranian missiles from doing the type of damage which Israel, as we definitely know, was not doing alone. The US, the UK and some Muslim countries in the neighborhood were helping it prevent the drone strikes and the missile strikes as well. So it wasn't a solitary action, yet the end result was that they were to a larger extent prevented, which is being termed as Israel's victory, whereas Iran, as our colleague from Iran would point out, terms its missile strikes as a victory by itself. So these are the two narratives. But after that, there could be a whole lot of sanctions. Iran could be termed in whatever things that there would be. There could be UN resolutions. There could be a lot of sanctions placed on Iraq, economic, diplomatic, political, cultural, all types of sanctions. And Iran is not new to those sanctions.
I know that. But
exactly.
you know, the fact is also that there are a lot of other resolutions and sanctions that need to be put on Israel as well. But that
which
has
they
also
are not going to do. Which they are not going to do.
That is not going to happen. And we have seen various proofs of that as well.
Absolutely.
Dr. Setareh Sadeqi, coming to you. Israel and Iran have accused one another at the United Nations of being the main threat to peace in the Middle East, and of course, and both have called on the Security Council to impose sanctions on each other. The mask is off Iran. This is what the Israeli side said. The #1 global sponsor of terror has exposed its true face as a destabilizer of the region and the world. Iran's UN ambassador Amir Saeed Iravani also said it is time for the Security Council to shoulder its responsibility and address the real threat to international peace and security. The body must take urgent and punitive measures to compel this regime to stop a genocide against the people of Gaza. In your point of view, has this conflict become more complicated and entangled with this recent event? Has the real issue of ceasefire and stopping the war in Palestine now going to take a back seat?
Well, it's very clear who is the main threat to peace and stability, not only in the region, but also across the world. And that's the regime that is carrying out a genocide in Gaza, the regime that is occupying Palestinians' lands and Syrians' lands in the region, and the regime that has been carrying out assassinations on Iranian soil, on Syrian soil. And this is the regime that has been occupying not only Palestinian lands, but also parts of Syria. So the Israeli regime, what the Israeli regime is now, the occupying Zionist regime is experiencing, is only a minor response to what it did against Iran. So we have to remember that it was Israel that attacked Iran and targeted Iranian embassy in Syria and killed Iranian officials and Iranian military generals. So what Iran has been doing is trying to de-escalate, even though it received an attack on its soil, and even though the public opinion inside Iran were very much expecting a very strong response from their governments to all the aggression that Israeli regime has been carrying out against it. So Iran even offered in return for no military action against what Israel did, a ceasefire on Gaza. So if Israel had accepted to a ceasefire in Gaza, Iran would not respond. But Israel preferred to escalate the tension, preferred to continue the genocide it's carrying out in Gaza, and preferred to engage in even more aggression with Iran. So Iran didn't even use hypersonic missiles. Iran's response was very proportionate. Iran attacked a military base, unlike Israel that attacks hospitals, schools, homes, mosques, churches, and embassies. Iran attacked a military base, and this military base was exactly where the missiles that attacked the Iranian consulate in Syria was launched from. So it all depends on what Israel and the U.S. wants to do. Nobody has condemned Israel for its attack. I mean, the UN, the U.S., they have not condemned Israeli attack on Iranian soil and on killing Iranian generals. Israel has been bragging about assassinating Iranian nuclear scientists for years. It has been bragging about cooperating with notorious terrorist organizations such as the MEK to kill and assassinate Iranians. MEK, by the way, has assassinated more than 17,000 Iranians, and this has been in cooperation with the U.S. and Israel. Israel has actually killed staff from the World Kitchen, from the United Nations. So Israel's aggression and savagery has not had mercy on anybody, not even Americans, not Europeans. So it is very clear who is the main reason for all the aggression and all the tension that we're seeing in the region. And what is going to happen next all depends on how much US wants to get involved, because Iran has made it clear that they are going to protect their national interests inside Iran and outside Iran. And if the US and Arab countries are going to use their bases to attack Iran or to prevent Iran from protecting its national interests, Iran is going to respond. And that's what the public opinion here wants. People here were very happy that finally Iran responded to all the aggression that was coming from Israel, not only because their national interests were threatened, but also because of what we are seeing since October 7, and it's happening in Gaza. And by the way, even what happened, I mean, what's happening in Gaza has a historical background, which is the occupation of the Palestinian land by the Zionist regime.
I agree with you. I agree with you with that, Dr. Setareh. Kindly stay on line with us. We will continue with our conversation in the guest, and we'll do a to and fro between the two of you. Dr. Salma, you've heard the Iranian side, and they say that this escalation has happened in the wake of the Palestinian situation that has escalated since the 7th of October last year. She also says that the United Nations has done nothing when their consulate in Damascus was attacked. Absolutely. And their members of the Revolutionary Guards and 2 generals were killed as a result of that. Secondly, I'd like to refer to what this emergency meeting happened of the United Nations Security Council, in which Secretary General Antonio Guterres urges restraint, telling the emergency meeting that neither the region nor the world can afford more war. And I think a better statement couldn't come at this time. Now is the time to diffuse and de-escalate. If we remember well, since the 1979 Iranian Revolution, Israel has been considered a sworn enemy by the Islamic Republic, which calls for, of course, very strong words as far as Israel is concerned. But until now, Tehran has restrained from attacking Israel head-on, and the two countries have operated instead to confronting each other through third parties, and we've discussed that in many shows in the past as well. Why this escalation now? And will both Israel and Iran diffuse and de-escalate? As the Iranian side has also said that they will not do anything, but if there is some reaction by the Israeli side, then there will be an even stronger rebuttal. What do you feel?
As Dr. Setareh has also just mentioned here, that there was a limit to to Iranian patience as well. The direct attack on Iran's embassy, killing of several of its military as well as other professionals and officials. And of course, there's also this history where in the past there have been attacks on Iranian nuclear strategic sites. The scientists have been killed, and there have been several other things. There have been cyber attacks as well, just to keep Iran in check, to keep Iran damaged and fractured as much as possible. But you can also see one pattern here, that they don't even want Iran to, God forbid, disappear, for the reason that they want to have some reason to keep Israel armed and armed to the teeth, because they want to have this viable threat against Israel, that Iran is that threat. And so they want Iran to be in control and in check, and not go beyond a point where the threat threshold is higher than what their calculation is, yet they don't even want that Iran should be neutralized beyond a certain point. So it's a pretty fascinating game of chess that they're playing here. So that Israel has a way of keeping itself weaponized, and there's a rationale to Israel's madness. But then you see, the fact is that whether you call it the established norm, you call it the hypocrisy, whatever the situation, any of these aspects, that direct attacks on embassies, killing of professionals, killing of officials, killing of innocent people, not in hundreds, not in thousands, but 30, 40,000 Palestinians losing their livelihood, losing everything, international aid workers being attacked. There are several countries, Australia, the US, several countries which are asking for as to why their nationals were attacked, singled out and attacked while helping out in humanitarian assistance. And Israel gets away with everything. And this is whatever we may call this. But this is how the world is going to remain. And now that Iran has responded, the global community has realized that Israel has been checkmated, and hence this call for restraint, and hence this call for containing yourself and not going beyond a single point. But I hope this does not just remain a crisis management exercise. It actually goes further and seeks a proper solution to the Palestinian problem, which is not going to happen, to be very honest. Because whatever Netanyahu is doing at the moment, it is going to continue, and this thing has provided him more logic, twisted, deviant logic, but more logic to do whatever he wants to do by saying that, oh, they're all terrorists. And the countries which are supporting Israel would believe it. And they're not doing anything about it, despite the fact that they're champions of human rights. So this is an unfortunate travesty that happens with this problem.
An unfortunate travesty, but the travesty nevertheless. Dr. Setareh, Iran's official statement, and I'd like to highlight different points of it, and I'd like your comment on it. It said a proportionate military action against the Zionist regime was aimed at targeting the military bases in occupied Palestine, that no civilians and non-military centers were targeted, that this action was carried out within the framework of the inherent and legitimate right of self-defense according to Article 51 of the United Nations Organization Charter, that it was in response to the Zionist regime's military attack targeting the consular section of Iran in Damascus. That Iran has already and repeatedly stated that in its principal framework, it does not seek to expand the scope of war and escalations in the region, and that restraint is not permanent because the continuation of that has led to the miscalculation by the Zionist regime. That Iran says that the root of the continued current crisis in the region is the Zionist regime's aggression and genocide in Gaza, that the key to solving the current situation is the immediate cessation of war and ceasefire in Gaza, and that Iran's response was minimal, and at a minimum range it could have been more severe, but this time it was to punish the Zionist regime. I have two questions. If the regime acts again, if this Zionist regime acts again in Israel, what kind of response are you foreseeing from Iran's side? And secondly, when you look at all these comments from Iran's side, what has, in your point of view, the reaction been from within and outside of Iran?
Well, as you mentioned, Iran has been exercising its right to self-defense based on Article 51 of the UN Charter, and that shows where the Iranian side stands in even practicing and protecting, safeguarding their national interests, which is being or acting within the international law and trying to avoid a major escalation and a major war, because it does not benefit anyone. But the madness that we're seeing from the Zionist regime is that of a regime that is on the verge of collapse, and you can expect anything coming from them, even without the U.S. support. Without the U.S. support, Israel cannot really do anything, because it's the U.S. that has been putting billions and billions of taxpayers' money into protecting Israel, and it is not in the national interest of the U.S. To spend more money and to get engaged even more than what they are now in the escalation here. But since Israel is very important to the U.S., and as you might remember, back a few decades ago, Biden, when he was a senator, he said that even if there was no Israel, we would have to create an Israel to protect our interests in the region. So that it shows where the U.S. And of course Israel stand in that tension. So whatever comes next, as I said, depends on the response that the Israel will give. The U.S. has advised Israel not to respond to Iran's retaliation in order to avoid a major escalation, and that they have said that they would not want to get engaged if Israel decides to attack Iran again. But as I said, the aggression, the madness, the barbarism that we're seeing from the Zionist regime doesn't seem to have any restriction or any limit, and we have to see if Israel decides to take further action against Iran, depending on how large the action would be, Iran's response would be definitely much stronger because, as I said, Iran hasn't even used their more advanced missile technologies yet, and they just wanted to warn Israel to stay out of this and to end the genocide that they're carrying out in Palestine.
Thank you so very much to have joined us, Dr. Setareh Sadeqi, political analyst joining us from Iran, and Dr. Salma Malik to have joined us from Pakistan and inside the studios. It's a pleasure to have two points of view that are extremely important under the current escalating situation, and I just hope that the powers that be realize the importance of de-escalation at this point. Whether it leads to a ceasefire is another thing altogether, but at this moment we cannot afford to have a further escalation in the region and in the world, and that is what the world needs to realize. Thank you very much.
Hope and pray. Thank you for having us.
We'll be back after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. Our second story today concerns Pakistan-IMF relations in the wake of Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb, who's arrived in Washington since yesterday with his team to participate, of course, in the IMF and the World Bank's spring meetings and initiate talks on a new financial package between the IMF and Pakistan. The IMF ministerial meetings and events are scheduled for the 17th to the 19th of this month, whereas the additional activities are also planned between the 15th and the 20th of this month. We've been joined by Dr. Aqdas Afzal. He's an economist and joins us online. Thank you very much, Dr. Aqdas, to have joined us. Dr. Aqdas, now that our finance minister has arrived in Washington to participate in the IMF and World Bank's spring meetings, what are the expectations from both the sides, that is in particular from the World Bank and the IMF as well as in Pakistan, and what in your point of view could be the likely outcome?
Thank you very much for taking me on the show. Yes, you are right that the finance minister has arrived in Washington, D.C. to participate in the annual IMF World Bank meetings that take place in Washington, D.C. every year. The expectations are very simple. The IMF would like the present government to continue on the path of economic reforms so that Pakistan can successfully conclude an extended fund facility. So let me remind your audience that we have already finished a standby arrangement that was worth about $3 billion over the last 9 months. That was very, very crucial in bringing about much needed stabilization to the Pakistani economy. And once that has successfully been concluded, Pakistan then, as was expected, requested the IMF for an extended fund facility in the neighborhood of $6 to $8 billion that is going to last anywhere from 36 to 39 months. And the IMF's expectation is that Pakistan will continue on the pathway of economic reforms, i.e. privatization of chosen state-owned enterprises, increasing Pakistan's resource mobilization, and general transparency and openness in the economy. So I think these are some of the key things that the IMF requires from Pakistan in order to successfully conclude the extended fund facility with Pakistan. And so the expectation is that Pakistan will be able to successfully conclude that in the months to come, especially right before the new budget that comes out at the end of June.
All right, Dr. Aqdas, also I'd like to understand, there was a meeting between the Pakistani delegation and the Pak-US Business Council in which different aspects of the relations were discussed, and also how to enhance cooperation in avenues such as agriculture, IT and mining. How important are talks like these? And we have seen the involvement of the SIFC. We have seen that a major contract was also signed with an important firm as far as the pink salt is concerned. And of course, mining, there was a huge exposure that also happened in Pakistan on mining as well, in which different experts from countries participated. How important is further collaboration on these sectors to further enhance and strengthen Pakistan's economy?
I think the biggest and the brightest news for Pakistan is the arrival of His Royal Highness Saudi Foreign Minister, along with the powerful Saudi delegation. And I was just watching the news that they have arrived in Pakistan to conclude some very important investment-related negotiations that have basically come about through painstaking efforts taken by both the SIFC and the Ministry of Finance. And I think these are the result of very, very long and drawn out negotiations and meetings. And we recently saw that Pakistan's Prime Minister met with His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, in Jeddah very, very recently. So I think that's the brightest news for Pakistan's economy. All this massive chunk of investment is going to be coming into Pakistan in the field of minerals, in agriculture, and definitely economic growth should be picking up from this point onward. So I welcome these efforts. I welcome the delegation. And I think we should be seeing some positive news on Pakistan's economic growth very soon.
All right, but what about, I understand that it's also a very, very important visit of our brothers from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and his delegation, and how very important agreements are going to be finalized during this stay. But there also have been meetings in the US, with the Pak-US Business Council, in which the same agriculture, IT and mining have also been discussed as avenues to further collaborate and enhance cooperation between the two countries. Do you see there is a huge potential in the US as well, as far as this is concerned?
Absolutely, yes. I think the feeling or the emerging consensus in Islamabad is that, Pakistan has been punching way below its weight in terms of agriculture, in terms of minerals, and especially IT. And I think assistance from the US Business Council is going to be the key in bringing these three sectors up to speed. And I think these three sectors, Pakistan, if reforms continue, if there is policy continuity, and if there is not a lot of geopolitical fragmentation in the world, I see these three sectors contributing significantly towards Pakistan's economic growth in the future.
All right. Also, Dr. Aqdas, I'd like to understand the meetings are not just with the IMF and the World Bank, but also with other important finance ministers from the countries that will also be attending these spring meetings, which include China and Saudi Arabia. Of course, we've got the foreign minister here, and we'll be having the finance minister there, in the US as well, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey and other friendly nations. How important are these meetings as well from a geo-economic point of view, and how could these benefit Pakistan?
Extremely important. Pakistan enjoys some soft power. Pakistan has a core group of friends which have always come to Pakistan's assistance whenever Pakistan has asked them, and it includes Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, China, Turkey, and some of the United Arab Emirates for sure. So I think these meetings in which the finance minister can meet with key, because almost all finance ministers from all major countries are going to be in Washington, D.C. And I think, so this is a very, very important forum for our finance minister to create a good working relationship with these different finance teams being led by the excellencies, finance ministers. And I think, like I said, the efforts of the SIFC, the Ministry of Finance, painstaking focus on reviving the economy. I see positive news coming from Pakistan's economy, provided two things happen. Number one, that geopolitical fragmentation and tensions remain under control, and the price of oil does not end up in a super spike.
All right, Dr. Aqdas, kindly stay online with us. We've also been joined by Dr. Usman Chohan, who's a leading political economist. He's right here in the studios. Thank you very much to have joined us, Dr. Usman. Dr. Usman, the IMF Managing Director, Kristalina Georgieva, mentions that Pakistan has crucial issues to resolve. I'll quote what she says. There are many important issues to be solved in Pakistan: the tax base, how the richer part of society contributes to the economy, the way public spending is being directed, and of course, creating a more transparent environment. She also, of course, acknowledges the country is interested in a new loan management. What are the issues, apart from the ones that she has highlighted, that Pakistan needs to resolve in order to move forward with the follow-up program and EFF after this one ends?
This is an excellent point because she only made a passing remark as part of a 2-point question. In fact, there are other things that she may have chosen to mention. One was on the expenditure side, because that is something that the IMF has been very tough on Pakistan in terms of asking us to reconcile the size of government. She happened to mention in a cursory manner that the tax base is an issue and that the elite element is that is fine. And another point is that the ease of doing business in terms of transparency is only one part of that. But in terms of facilitating business to thrive, both local and foreign, this is also something that is important, and it is something that the IMF plus its sister organizations like the World Bank insist on a lot, and I think it is important, of course. So if you were to take what she said and these two other elements, you already would have the excellent summary of what needs to be done.
All right, in the end of mission statement that was announced last month on the successful completion of the SBA, the IMF said Pakistan has expressed a successor medium-term fund-supported program with certain aims, and it highlighted those aims: permanently resolving Pakistan's fiscal and external sustainability weaknesses, strengthening its economic recovery, laying the foundations for a strong, sustainable and inclusive growth. How important and achievable are these challenges?
They're absolutely achievable. The more we look at what needs to be done, we see that Pakistan is capable of resolving all of its crises, all of the problems of the world, even in the most difficult international environments, because the world is not in a stable situation. The things that matter to our economy from an international perspective also impact other countries. For example, the price of oil, and with things heating up further in the Middle East, what's going to happen? Those things will weigh down. But in terms of getting the house in order proverbially, there is plenty that can be done. In fact, the path becomes more and more clear with every successive iteration, with every successful change of power. You see the people realize, you know what, we cannot keep kicking this down the road.
True.
That kicking the can down the road mentality is shrinking, because we're at the end of a road in terms of a transition from one generation to another. So I think that it is a high time that we do address the things, and then you won't need the IMF to tell you what to do.
Let's hope that happens pretty soon. Dr. Aqdas, final question to you. How important is it for Pakistan to look at its macroeconomic and microeconomic indicators and address all the lacunae that exist in order to have a more constructive relationship with the IMF?
Well, it's going to be absolutely important. Look, the IMF has laid down certain conditions, certain expectations, and one of those expectations is successful privatization of certain state-owned enterprises. Now, there has been very, very fast and significant development when it comes to privatization of certain state-owned enterprises. And I think this direction must continue. Pakistan must get a grip over its external account. We have done a pretty decent job of curtailing or controlling our external deficit. Our fiscal deficit is also in check. Matter of fact, we generated a significant primary surplus when it comes to our fiscal account when you compare it to last year. So Pakistan's economic and financial management or fiscal management has been pretty good. And like I said, I don't see many problems as long as Pakistan continues on this path towards economic reforms, which are going to be key in putting Pakistan's economy on a path towards economic growth and inclusive economic growth, which is so crucially required for Pakistan's almost 250 million people.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Aqdas Afzal, to have joined us and to have highlighted this very important factor as far as Pakistan-IMF relation is concerned. Thank you very much to have joined us. Final question to you, Dr. Usman Chohan. Dr. Aqdas Afzal pointed towards the reform process. In the past programs, also 4 central areas have remained, and this is what is expected that in the future program also these areas will remain under focus for the reforms. Strengthening public finances. Second, of course, restoring the energy sector's viability by accelerating cost-reducing reforms, returning inflation to the target with a deeper and more transparent, flexible foreign exchange market, and promoting private-led activity through the above-mentioned actions, as well as removal of distortionary protection advancement of reforms, and of course on state enterprises. Can these objectives these 4 important objectives as far as reforms are concerned be achieved? Has Pakistan satisfied the IMF as far as the reform process is concerned, and other conditionalities that the IMF puts forward as far as working with partners is concerned?
Yes, well, this is a multi-pronged question. It covers a lot of ground. The most important thing is that can these 4 areas that have been the target of previous reform efforts be further addressed? Yes, they can. Ultimately, the problem becomes one of will. Political will. There are always vested interests that get in the way of such things because they get nice economic rent from the way things are. Now, if we want to have something that helps our economic sustainability, we wouldn't want these. The push is coming to shove against these vested interests because overall the system cannot function in such a manner indefinitely. That includes the energy sector in particular. That includes inflation as well. That includes the seated and dormant private sector energies. These things will simply have to be driven forward. And so I think that there's plenty to be done, but I think, yes, as my colleague had mentioned, there has been good work done as well. So it is a long-term thing to accomplish. I think we're on the right path, that is for sure.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Usman Chohan, to have joined us as well. And of course, we have highlighted the different aspects of the relationship going forward between the IMF and Pakistan, all the of course, the prerequisites that Pakistan needs to adhere to in order to move forward in that respect. Let's come to our last 3 stories very, very quickly. The first concerns the Saudi Foreign Minister who's arrived in Pakistan. A high-level Saudi delegation led by the Saudi Foreign Minister, Prince Faisal bin Farhan, has reached Islamabad, I think around an hour back. The visit is aimed at lending positive impetus to enhance bilateral cooperation and of course also mutually rewarding economic relationship that exists between both the countries. It consists of the Saudi Minister for Water and Agriculture, Minister for Industry and Mineral Resources, Deputy Minister for Investment, Head of Saudi Special Committee and senior officials from the Ministry of Energy and Saudi Fund for General Investments. This also comes in the whole follow-up on the understandings that were reached between our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and the Crown Prince and Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia Mohammed bin Salman during their recent meeting in Makkah to enhance bilateral economic cooperation. All the very best to furthering that relationship during this coming visit. Then we are going to talk about Pakistani climbers, ladies and gentlemen, who have achieved a lot as far as scaling the world's 14 highest peaks are concerned. They have not yet achieved the 14 highest peaks, but this is what the aim is. Whether it be Sajid Satpara, who is going towards more and more peaks, whether it be Sirbaz Khan, Shehroz Kashif, who are also aiming to climb as many peaks as possible, whether it be Samina Beg from Shimshal, who climbed the Everest in 2013 and became the first woman in the history of Pakistan, or whether it be Naila Kiani, who has just also climbed her 10th peak. Uzma Yusuf, Sabah Halim, so many important names are there as far as this is concerned. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about a genetic engineer, a French-Canadian scientist, Michael Sutherland, who has been awarded an Oscars of Science Prize in Los Angeles on Saturday for his research into genetically modifying immune cells to fighting cancer. We have been looking for a cure for cancer for such a long time, and this is a step in the very right direction. His work has helped develop a new form of therapy that is known as CAR-T that has shown exceptional efficacy against certain types of blood cancer. Now, launched in 2010, this breakthrough prize awards the world's most brilliant minds in fields including life sciences, including fundamental physics and mathematics, styling itself as a Silicon Valley backend answer to the Nobels. All the very best and congratulations to Michel Sutherland to have achieved that. We look forward to a possible cure, in fact a cure to all forms of cancer in the days, weeks and months to come. With that, we come to an end of today's news, and we'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news story segments that pertain to us, you in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.